So let's see some examples about how doing a literature review. To memorize, to record, researchers use the literature to search to show what does the literature tell us about the object of the research, to show how to close the gaps that the researcher addresses in the thesis or in the research, to derive the research questions and or hypotheses, and to show the theoretical, managerial, and methodological contribution.
So let's see some tips and advices and practical examples how to do a literature review. So I recall, for each article a summary must be created, summarizing the most important elements of the article. Create a summarizing table with the following columns. So the authors and the date of publication, the sector or countries in which the study or the article was written and the research was done, the problem, the research question, and the central research goal, the concepts and the variables used, and give the definitions, as well as associated theories, the research design, namely the sample and methods which are used, the main results, and the limits, research gaps, and future research directions. So this brings you a summarizing table in which you summarize all articles that you have read, which gives you then an idea what has been done in the literature and what has not been done in the literature, opening future research directions and the formulation of your research target. In the following, you will see some examples of tables coming from research we have done.
So let's see some examples of literature reviews. You create this kind of table and put the information coming directly from the articles that you have read. And these tables should summarize and synthesize the information of the articles that you have read. So this comes from a research we have done about social connections, on social media, Facebook, social capital, and the impact on well-being. It's a table in which you put different columns or in type of information. The first column should cite the authors. The second column should cite the context of research, for example, the countries, the data used, the sample size, the year when the studies were done. The third type of information should be the summary of the main findings. And a last column should point out the future research directions and the limits. For example, here in this study, we have found 6 different studies. So for example, study 1 from Steinfeld and colleagues, it was done with different panel surveys in 2006, 2007, and with undergraduate students. They used regression analysis. The main findings were that Facebook allows to build and maintain weak ties among large groups of acquaintances and superficial connections, and therefore enhances bridging social capital. Self-esteem moderates the relationship between Facebook usage and intensity and bridging social capital. The study 2 from Kim and Lee in 2011 was done with 391 college students. They used ANOVA to analyze the data, and they found a direct positive relationship between the number of Facebook friends and subjective well-being, and a negative curvilinear relationship between friends and social support. The third study from Menelgo and colleagues in 2012 was done with 88 college students. They used analysis of variances, ANOVA, and they showed that a larger social network, that is a number of Facebook friends, independent from the quality of connections, enhances subjective well-being and social support. So you see, the idea is to summarize the main findings, the main information about the articles having done on a given subject.
Literature agrees about the fact that social network sites establish social capital, and social capital in general enhances feelings of well-being. As you can see, most of the studies have been done with students, so convenient samples, and very small samples. One contribution is to replicate with a more representative sample data. So this is one of the gaps we identified. And the second Another gap is there are two facets. We include both bridging and bonding social capital. Bonding are very close links and bridging are very loose links. So we include both facets, whereas most research only includes one of these facets. We included an intimacy and closeness index with friends in order to see if the impact varies according to the intimacy we have with friends on social media. And we included well-being. There are some research priorities. One of them is to work on well-being. So we included a never-tested CAP variable in this research, a dependent variable, not only purchase behavior, but well-being, which is another gap we closed with our research.
With our research questions, we close the following gaps.
What is the impact of social media on social bridging and bonding capital? And we have differentiated effects according to the closeness of friends with which we are together. And lastly, what is the impact of social media on well-being?
In the following, we will see some other tables, more extended tables, to do a literature review.
Here you can see an example of an extended table of summary for literature review. You can see in the first column, you should put the authors and the years of publication, for example, Meyer-Warden 2015. Then in the next column, you put the context, country, and the sector. So, for example, the study was done in France, grocery retail, and perfumery. Then the column about data, the sample size, and the method of analysis. So there were two samples used with survey data, experimentation, and the data was analyzed with structural equation modeling. A column about the main findings and contributions, so perceived value of loyalty programs and satisfaction impact loyalty. Another column about research limits and gaps, so the study only used declarative and no behavioral data, and there was a lack of other concepts of loyalty program perceived value, such as, for example, hedonistic benefits. And finally, future research directions, so future studies should use behavioral store scanner data combined with declarative data and should use other concepts of loyalty program perceived value. So you can see that the studies you read should be then summarized with these different types of information. And this enables you then through the research limits and gaps and through the future research directions to elaborate your own research questions and research problems based on the literature review. So let's see some examples of literature reviews. The first example is about the impact of loyalty programs on purchase behavior published in Journal of Retailing, Journal of Academy of Marketing Science. And so we have the references just here below, which were the identified gaps and theoretical contributions we did after having done our literature review and after having identified research gaps or research limits. We wanted to study the real influence of customer loyalty programs on customer buying behaviors. As the practice, that is management consultants, says that loyalty programs have an influence on company performance. Various previous research indicates that customer loyalty programs have little impact on purchasing behaviors. But there are no long-term studies with behavioral data before and after loyalty program enrollment. So our gap was the use of 3 years of panel and store scanner data with purchase behavior and the data integration of customer loyalty program enrollment. And our research question formulated were the following: do customer loyalty programs influence buying behaviors? Is the influence lasting and long-term orientated? Which purchasing behavior indicators are influenced by customer loyalty programs, such as, for example, purchase frequencies, purchase baskets, share of wallet? Which rewards, economic, hedonistic, or social rewards, have the most influence? Does personalization have positive effects on buying behaviors? Because loyalty programs collect data, and thus the question is if this data enables firms to do personalization and subsequently influence buying behaviors. And finally, are there sector differences according to retail or the service? Naturally, we did not give an answer to all of these questions in the different articles. In the article we wrote, which came from my PhD, we only gave an answer to the question one. So if loyalty programs influence purchase behavior, and if yes, long lasting. And finally, which are the indicators which are influenced? So purchase frequency, purchase baskets, share of wallet, inter-purchase time. So we only formulated 3 research questions for the PhD and subsequently for the publication. So this brings me to the idea, less is more. So we cannot give an answer to all of these research questions by doing one research, a DBA or a PhD or any other research. And therefore, subsequently in my research program, I worked on the research question, which are the rewards that have the most influence by taking into account different dimensions of perceived value. And personalization. Finally, I focused subsequently in the subsequent years on sector differences. But it is important that after having done the literature review, after having identified the gap of the research, to give an answer to a very narrow approach, narrow number of research questions, because unless it becomes too complicated and too sophisticated, too complicated to test a model. The second example comes from a research where we studied the influence of big data management, corporate culture, and big data analytics on customer relationship management and corporate performance. This article is published in Information and Management, so you see the reference here. So our identified gaps, our theoretical contributions are the following. So the practice management consultants says that big data resources have an important influence on company performance. Some consulting companies state that big data management can improve in a very important manner by 100 times the firm performance. On the other hand, the research to date gives no empirical evidence that big data resources have an impact on corporate performance. However, there is no empirical study. So the gap is we are doing a B2B survey, business to business survey for the measurement how the marketing function can achieve competitive advantages through big data resources and how the impact of big data resources is on marketing efficiency. How big data resources impact subsequently company performance, which might be a source of competitive advantage. So the question is, do big data resources create any competitive advantages? And finally, how the company strategy, low cost versus differentiation, influence the link between big data resources and company performance. So in other words, we use the company strategy coming from Porter, low cost versus differentiation, as a moderating variable. You can see that the problematic and the gap is similar than for the loyalty programs. So it's a good idea to use practice information, practice statements, or practice dogmas coming from management consultants, and to confront these statements, which are mostly very exaggerated and mostly not really proved by scientific empirical evidence and research. So to confront these dogmas to research, academic research, in order to see how management practice, here in this case big data management, really impacts firm performance. And so there's an interesting tension to confront practitioners' views with academic views. And this might create interesting discussions and interesting research domains. And so in this research, we identified the following gaps and did the following theoretical contributions. And so what are the key antecedents of big data use? What are the factors that influence big data use of the firms? How and to what extent does big data resources influence marketing capabilities, customer relationship, and ultimately business and financial performance? What are the most important aspects of big data management? Which factors influence the use of big data management in companies? To what extent does the use of big data influence customer relationship management performance and subsequently financial performance? And does the strategy and industry influence big data impact on firm performance? These different questions were answered in the research we did. A third example is about the acceptance factors of smart connected objects and smart homes, coming from different articles about artificial intelligence powered smart homes, artificial intelligence powered autonomous vehicles, the acceptance of smart retail stores based on artificial intelligence, another article about how service quality influence customer acceptance and usage of chatbots, the acceptance of Internet of Things, and other smart connected objects in the IoT environment. We identified the following gaps and theoretical contributions after having done a literature review. As IoT is the next step into higher company firm performance, but there's few research and few empirical and academic evidence about IoT and smart connected objects, smart homes, and autonomous vehicles. There are barriers to the IoT, smart connected object, as well as smart home and autonomous vehicle acceptance and development. And innovations can fail because competition, changing demand, user reluctance related to reliability, health, psychological dependence, fear, technology fears namely, and privacy concerns. And after having done our literature review, you can see here from 2010 to 20, so in 10 years, only few articles from academic business science journals with the keywords IoT, smart objects, smart homes, home automation, well-being, and marketing, identified the different topics. So for example, about IoT and marketing, only 9 articles were published in academic journals. About smart technology and marketing, only 0 articles have been published. About smart home and home automation, 160 articles were published, but mainly in engineering journals. About smart homes and well-being, consumer well-being, only 0 articles have been published. About smart home and smart home acceptance, only 2 articles have been published. About smart home and marketing, only 0 articles have been published. And finally, about smart objects and marketing management, also only 0 articles have been published. We can see there are big contributions to do about well-being, consumer well-being, but also about smart homes and the link to and the impact on consumer well-being, smart homes and acceptance, smart homes and marketing management and marketing. So therefore, in line with literature, which explained calls that the literature is scarce about IoT and smart connected object acceptance, namely Verhoeven and colleagues in 2017, research about IoT, smart homes, autonomous vehicle acceptance is necessary. So we contribute theoretical to the literature by defining, first of all, smart objects, smart homes, by finding cognitive and affective factors favoring, but also hindering smart home and autonomous vehicle acceptance, including smart connected objects. By integrating few used social, affective, and cognitive concepts such as well-being, trust, social factors, anxiety, and technology fears or privacy concerns, and by developing an extended smart home, autonomous vehicle, or smart connected technology acceptance model. So, and we contributed practically by improving communication and marketing strategies for smart homes, autonomous vehicles, which are largely new technologies. Our research questions were the following: which cognitive affective factors favor smart home and autonomous vehicle and smart connected object acceptance, and which cognitive affective barriers hinder smart home, AV, and smart connected object acceptance.